we have to have 30 days notice. This is one of those years where the days fell incorrectly. Normally, we could have had town meeting as long as we voted on the Monday.
First night, yeah.
Then we could have, the board could have that evening then set the ballot question. We don't have that luxury.
I just don't recall a number ever being included in a budget override question. I understand, the difference in a capital override, but I don't recall there being a number on the ballot in the past.
So the consensus is C?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the format of ballot question for an override be in the format as specified in 2C.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. O'Leary, seconded by Mr. Vino. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next item. Lost my agenda already.
It's your Financial Advisory Committee.
Right. So I had suggested to the board that in light of what we've gone through, and not just this year, but the past couple of years, it's time for us to become very proactive in finding some solutions to this ongoing problem. And with respect to that, I'm recommending that we, and I feel very strong about this, and I'll define where I'm looking for a lot of input, is that we form a financial advisory committee. Now, we have a financial planning team, but what we're looking for, at least what I'm looking for, is some people that are familiar with budgeting, familiar with activists that can go off and collect and provide some information and can put together a report for our October town meeting that covers and takes a hard look at revenue opportunities above and beyond what we normally have, of which there were a large number of what I think to be good suggestions, but take some time to implement. And this time frame that I have in mind is that over the next 2 years we've got to get to our final goal. And the final goal is that we get to a sustaining level for school and town services, meaning that we've brought the school, if we fall short of, if an override fails, for example, and we still have some way to go to fully fund the school, that by the year 2011, 2 years from now, that we'll have in a step next year, and then in 2011 get to that point. And that we're going to do this by looking at additional sources of revenue, short-term, long-term, and also look at changes that we can make in the way we're doing things, both in town government, in school. And there are a lot of things, in process already. We've invested heavily in our technology infrastructure. We're currently in the process of implementing a whole new accounting system for school and general government. A couple examples that come to mind is we have different systems that create the different bills that go out each month. So it's almost impossible to consolidate some of this stuff, because there's different programs that generate these different bills. And these are things that we can fix as we go forward, especially with the new systems. And if we look at just the general way we're doing things in other parts of town hall, some of the services that we offer, should we be offering? Should we make changes to them? On the school side, the same thing. I know that at the beginning of the budget process, the superintendent said, if he didn't get the override, or he didn't even, back then we were talking about closing the gap, right? If the gap couldn't be closed, it would require some major restructuring of the way the schools are being operated. I think those are the kinds of things that need to be looked at. And what I'd like to see is this group come back, and this is a short exercise, but to come back at October town meeting and make a report as to what are the key things that we as administrators, town side, school side, should be looking at to implement change. And it needs to be done from, I believe it needs to be done with at least some participation from people that are outside of the current way we're doing things, that will help provide more of an out-of-the-box kind of look at things. And it includes the health insurance. It includes taking a hard look at our contracts and seeing where we should be going with them. We're going to be already involved in new contract negotiations, and the school teachers contract, I think, is up a year hence. So that these are all, in my opinion, opportunities that we need to put some effort into to see, in fact, if we can find a way of closing the gap. Now, what's the gap? Well, the gap probably next year isn't going to be much different than it is this year. And after the May election, because we've decided to put a override question on the ballot, when we take the outcome of it, I would take this year's budget. It's the baseline. It's not hard to make a revenue forecast. There's some iffy things in there associated with state aid, but we could take, the conservative cut that we normally start in October, November. Right now, we can ask the school department to provide us with, and they'll know based on the budget, what their additional resources they're looking to put into next school's budget based on anticipated enrollment or shift in enrollment from one school to another. They can take the current salary schedule plus the new, and they can roll that up, and they can come up with, a rough ballpark number that will define, whether we're dealing with $1 million gap or a $500,000 gap based on some early estimates. And then at least we have a target to start to work at. And this is what I think we need to do. And I would urge the support of the board to get behind this. And, I know there'll be a lot of discussion on what the makeup of this group should be. And, I respect that. And I'm not hung up on what the makeup is, as long as it's the right kind of makeup to accomplish the goal. And that is, in 2011, that we have found ways of increasing revenue, made adjustments to the way we're doing business so that we don't have a budget gap every year. We're living within 2.5. And if it requires that we need a 1% override every year, that's not necessarily a good solution, but at least we'd know that that's the kind of thing we're dealing with up front. And I'll open it up for discussions. Mr. Bino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to say I'm opposed to it. I think that the intent is very very good, Bob, on what you're trying to do. I just don't see how the committee can actually attain what you or what we would like them to see. I mean, unless something falls out of the sky, we know we're going to be about $1 million short next year, and $1 million short the year after, just because of contracts that are being, that have been signed in the past. So I really, I'm not totally opposed to it, but I'm not totally for it yet. Maybe I can be talked into it. I mean, now, as far as them coming back with their recommendations, and we all know where I came from. It's no secret. But I don't want to hear them come up and tell me I'm going to lay off 2 police officers, because that flawed misinformation benchmark study has got everybody in this town believing we have too many police officers. And ladies and gentlemen, the information in that study was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. That's all I hear. Why do we need all these police officers? That's the first thing I hear, because the study was wrong. You saw how competent they were when they didn't show up for the first meeting. So I've said enough about that. I like the idea of them coming up with ideas, and I'm sure that's gonna be one of them, because it's in that benchmark study. But as long as it's not something that we expect everyone to go along with, there's no way they're gonna find $1 million a year without cutting on the town side. And I don't mean any disrespect to the school when I say this, I truly don't. They're not gonna ask for any less. So if you're gonna find $1 million, it's gonna have to be over here. With their budgets kicking in and their step raises, et cetera, I agree with the concept, Bob, but I just don't know how it's gonna work out. You know what I think, it may turn in we're in a budget battle for 12 months rather than 3. So, that's just my thoughts on it. I just don't know how it'll work yet.
Okay, Phil?
Planning is always a good thing. It's always a good thing. I think that I sent you an email on this, that the problem is that you don't want to create a committee that's so ambitious that the sheer weight of the goals sink it, okay? So, and the thing is with this particular type of committee is that, you know, if it's seen as a coordinating committee, then I think it has a better chance of success. In other words, okay, I think that, you know, that they should be, if you state a committee that goes out and brings in the information together, Michael and I are working on an energy committee. You know, what savings is going to come out of that? So rather than them reinventing the wheel and redoing all of this stuff, instead going to the committees that exist, the sewer committee, the energy committee, the school department, and ask what they're doing and put it in one kind of comprehensive approach. Okay, I'm not against that. I am kind of against a new group out there. You've got the finance committee, you've got the finance team, you've got the selectmen, you've got all these groups, okay? It's really, if you're saying you want to create a team that kind of brings together all these ideas and puts them together and puts some dollars on them, then I don't have any problem with that. If we're going to try to create a group that's going to try to, you know, reinvent everything while all this is going on independently, then I think that that's going to sink itself. I just don't think it can be successful.
That wasn't my intent. I think my intent is more along your thoughts, is that
I'm in favor of that, then.
there are a number of people that have, you know, clearly got involved this past budget cycle.
Yeah.
A number of them have a fair amount of expertise. A number of them have some ideas. And what we need to do is to pursue those ideas to the point where the reality of, you know, the value of each one of these is known, and that they can be weighed. The ultimate decisions on town government falls to the board. Similarly, with the school, falls on the school department. Certainly are not, my intent is not to take away that authority. It's to get some help. I mean, you know, we have a finance planning team, and we struggle with some of the basic things, and it's a matter of how much time people have to do various things, right? And I had suggested that, you know, clearly that there would be board participation in any group that we put together, because they have to have a link back into getting information, whether it's from town hall or whether it's from the school department. There's got to be some authorized way and some leverage in terms of getting the information needed to put this together. And it's a fair amount of work, but you know, the outcome will be at least a better understanding. You know, people come up with ideas of putting advertising on police cars and a whole host of things that I've heard. The thing that you and Mike are working on is an opportunity too. And you know, we're not going to close this gap with $500,000 items anymore. We're going to close it with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 savings here and there.
Nickels and dimes,
And
absolutely.
you know, it's going to take a fair amount of energy to pull all of this together and see where we are. I want to know where we are when we go into October town meeting,
Yeah.
and then we can start to deal with the issue, rather than here we are, you know, 2 weeks away from town meeting, and we're still juggling balls, and it's no different than it was last year, even though we attempted to get to an earlier start. We just didn't get there. Yes, Steve?